If you're riding in an Uber or a Lyft and you're in an accident, it's important to know when is the Uber or Lyft driver the person responsible for that accident. And if they're the person who caused the accident, meaning, for example, they're the person who ran through a red light, they're the person who wasn't paying attention, then they're at fault for your injuries. If you're in an Uber or a Lyft and another vehicle causes the crash, then that person is typically the person who's liable in a car accident. However, in certain circumstances, the Uber or Lyft driver may have done something that contributed to the crash. And in cases like that, you want to have an experienced attorney on your side who knows the ins and outs of the rideshare systems to be able to determine whether or not there's fault on the Uber or Lyft driver and whether or not they should have to share in paying for your injuries. When you're in an accident involving an Uber or a Lyft, sometimes the responsibility for that accident is shared between the person who hit you while you were in that rideshare and the Uber and Lyft the Uber or Lyft driver who contributed to that accident. For example, if your Uber driver is not paying attention and doesn't see this person who's swerving outside their lane, then your Uber driver could have done something to avoid that accident. And so they share in that responsibility. What's important to know is that it's not your fault. You're not the person who caused this accident, and Uber has an insurance policy that will cover you for accidents caused by their rideshare drivers. And the person who hit you may also have an insurance policy that will cover you for your injuries. So under Florida law, that liability can be split between the two parties, and both of them may have a responsibility to pay for your injuries. When you're in an accident involving a Lyft or an Uber, under Florida law, the person that you are suing is the driver, not necessarily Uber or Lyft. That's because the Florida legislature put a statute in place to protect rideshare companies from direct liability unless it's shown that they hired this rideshare driver knowing that this person was going to be dangerous. So for example, if they hired somebody with a history of car accidents or a history of DUIs, for example, and then let that person be a rideshare driver and then that person drove in a negligent way that caused you injuries, then not only is that rideshare driver responsible, but Uber or Lyft directly would be responsible. Accidents involving rideshare companies can be very tricky to navigate, and it's important that you have an experienced attorney to help you navigate the ins and outs of how to handle these companies. If you have any questions, you should call the Florida Law Group. We have years of experience dealing with Uber, Lyft, and other rideshare companies and recovering for our clients' injuries caused by the negligence of these companies.